Welcome, everyone. My name is Charles, or RMZ, and today I'm discussing my 2-year journey on a GLP-1. This is the complete story of my GLP-1 journey, but really it's the story of my struggle with weight, dealing with injuries, and finding healing. This isn't a short video. It's not a highlight reel. It's not a social media version of a transformation. This is everything, the whole truth, exactly as it happened. So settle in, take a seat, or take a walk while you listen, grab something to drink, and thank you for giving me the space to tell this story. Now, let's take it back a bit. For my childhood, obesity wasn't even a concept in my world. I grew up as an active kid, the kind who played outside until the streetlights came on, organized baseball and football, recreational basketball, running races in the streets, riding bikes until the chains popped off, climbing trees, and jumping off roofs. Don't try that at home. I was getting dirty, getting bruised, and just being free as a kid. There were no metabolic issues, no health problems, nothing pointing towards the future struggle I would eventually have, but there was something shaping me without me knowing it. The clean your plate rule. If you grew up in a similar household, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You don't get up from the table until every last thing on your plate is gone, whether you're full or not. See, and that rule came from survival. My parents were raised by parents who lived through the Great Depression. Being Black in the South only added another layer of complexity to that. So you didn't waste food. You didn't complain. You ate what was given, and that was it, period. Now, as a growing athlete, that wasn't a problem for me. My body burned through everything, but it planted a seed on how I would eat in the future. In high school, I weighed around 200 pounds my senior year. I was lean, I was strong, I was fast. And then I broke my leg in 3 places. And I think the 6th game of the season, and recovery took about 2 years before I returned to football in college. In college, I played Division I football. I built myself into a 250-pound defensive end. I was muscled, conditioned, ready for battle. Football is a violent sport, but on the line, every snap is a collision, a literal car accident, 60 to 80 times a game. Kick out blocks from the fullback, pulling guards, double teams, head-to-head contact, every single play. And this doesn't even account for going through spring ball, going through fall camp, or daily practices during the week. It takes a toll that the average person cannot comprehend. I suffered back and neck injuries that cost me a season. I took a medical red shirt, and those injuries never fully healed, and they just compounded. They followed me for the rest of my playing career and into the rest of my life. During my senior year, I didn't even practice. I spent the week recovering so I could go full speed on game day. By the time my career was over, my body was beaten in ways I wouldn't fully understand until years later. I told myself I'd rest for a year and then get back to going to the gym, get back in shape, but that year never came. Everything hurt. My neck, my back, my hips, my knees, my shoulders. Movement no longer felt good. It felt dangerous. And that's when I realized how easily former athletes gain weight. Your appetite remains at that athlete level. Your drive, your intensity, your structure, all that's gone though. Life replaces them. You develop a career, you have kids, you attend practice schedules for your kids, you take them to games, you're coaching their little league teams, you're sitting at a desk, you're sitting in traffic, you're trying to be everywhere for everyone. You're no longer chasing performance goals, no longer fighting for a starting spot, no longer being evaluated every single week. The fire that once pushed you through pain goes dim, and the weight slowly and quietly comes on. And I tried desperately to reclaim movement by having steroid injections in my back, steroid injections in my hip. I had a laminectomy to release pressure on my nerves in the back. I had a right SI joint fusion, and then came the weight loss attempts. After failing with diet and exercise, I turned to a lap band in 2009. And I chose a lap band because it was reversible. It felt like a safer option, but I didn't know about food noise back then. I didn't know my brain was wired now for hunger in a different way, likely tied back to being forced to clean my plate as a child. And I constantly pushed past the restriction that the lab ban was giving me, which created constant discomfort, constant vomiting, which led to scarring on my esophagus. And by January 2014, they removed all the saline from the lab ban, and I was around 290 pounds then. And then I get into a series of surgeries, a bilateral hernia repair. I had my lap band removed and my appendix removed. I had two major hip surgeries. My bones were shaved, my labrum was repaired, my femoral head was shaved. And with every recovery, my weight went up. Movement got harder. Life got heavier. So then I turned to a gastric sleeve in 2015, October 2015. At that point, I reached 358 pounds, over 100 pounds more than where I was during my playing days. And the sleeve worked. I went from 358 pounds down to 274 pounds, and I maintained around 280 to 285 until the pandemic hit. I was working from home for 18 months. I had no gym. I was not walking. I had no escape from the kitchen. And I also had a full hip replacement at the end of 2020. And my weight would eventually climb back up to 335 pounds. So I was back to nearly where I was. And then I went on a cruise in February of 2023. And one photo of myself, changed everything. I didn't recognize the man in the picture. I felt ashamed. I was embarrassed that I got back to this high weight again, and I was determined to correct that. So I started keto, and I dropped from 335 pounds down to 294 pounds in about 4 months. And then frustration returned, the food noise returned, and joint pain returned. And I felt trapped in a cycle that I've been fighting for nearly 2 decades. And then in late 2023, I finally started learning about GLP-1 medications, truly learning about them. I knew about Ozempic, but only as a diabetic drug. I didn't know Wegovy existed for weight loss, and I didn't know that Zepbound was coming. And then in November of 2023, I tried getting Wegovy. I reached out to a telehealth doctor. They told me I was a great candidate for this medication, but he couldn't prescribe it because Novo Nordisk had stopped making their starter doses available due to the ongoing shortage that they were experiencing because so many people were demanding these medications. And I was told that I would have to wait about 6 months before I could start. And then in December of 2023, Zepbound was approved by the FDA, and everything changed. On January 3rd, I got my lab work done. January 4th, my prescription was submitted, and January 9th, my prior authorization was approved, and I picked up the medication from CVS. And I put it in the refrigerator for a few days, and I took my first injection on January 12th at 315.1 pounds. And I took that on that Friday because that was a work from home day for me. So if I had any side effects, I can manage them after I took my first dose. And then I took that first dose and life pivoted for me. Now, I didn't expect much. Everyone said the starter dose wasn't therapeutic. It was just a primer. But 1 week later, I was down 9.3 pounds. And I knew from that moment, my body finally had a tool that worked for me, not against me. So here's my journey exactly as it happened as I was in active weight loss. In month 1, I was on 2.5 milligrams and I lost a total of 16.5 pounds on that dose. I felt my appetite change immediately. The food noise was gone. I had energy again. My joints felt better with the reduction of inflammation. And by week 3, I began working out. I was doing cardio on light weights, and I was just developing consistency. In month 2, I bumped up to 5 milligrams and I lost a total of 12 pounds on that dose, which brought my total weight loss to 28.5 pounds down. I was still strong and still going steady. At the end of month 3, I bumped up to 7.5 milligrams. And I would stay on this dose for 3 months. That first month, I lost 13.9 pounds for a total of 42.4. Month 4, I lost 9.8 pounds for a total of 52.2. And on month 5, I lost 13.6 pounds for a total of 65.8. Clothes were fitting me differently. My energy was improving. My mindset was shifting. And then in month 6, I bumped up to the 10 milligram dose. And that dose hit me the hardest. It put me flat for about the first 2 weekends that I was on that dose. But I did end up losing 11.4 pounds during that first month on 10 milligrams, which brought my total loss to 77.2 pounds. And then in month 7, I lost 10.4 pounds. And I started realizing how possible my goals were. And in week 29, I surpassed my goal. I set a goal of 225 pounds for my weight. And I lost 3.8 pounds in week 29, which brought my total loss within that 29 weeks to 91.4 pounds. And my weight was 223.7 pounds at that time. And so I lost 29% of my starting weight. It was gone within 29 weeks. During those 29 weeks, due to my consistency in the gym, consistency in my diet, and the help of the medication, I did not have a single week where I stalled, not a single week where I went without loss. I averaged 3.15 pounds per week in loss. And like I mentioned earlier, I didn't start training until about week 3. But once I started, I was committed to it. I did cardio 5 to 6 days a week. I just got on a treadmill for 45 to 60 minutes at a time. I started the pace at 3.5 miles per hour and eventually worked up to 4 miles per hour. And I changed my incline from 3 and eventually worked up to 4.5. In addition to going to the gym to hit the treadmill, I would also walk during my breaks at work. So twice a day, I would walk for 15 minutes to make sure I was getting those steps in. I would do weight training 3 days a week: chest presses, leg press, arm curls, lat pull downs, tricep press, hamstring curls. There's 3 sets of each, 8 to 10 reps at a time. Nothing fancy. I wasn't trying to be Mr. Olympia or anything. I just wanted to ensure that I had consistency. So I went to the gym and stayed and stuck to it. And then on my diet, I went back to my bariatric training. I focused on protein first, getting at a minimum 150 grams of protein per day, 1,800 calories a day, cut out alcohol, cut out sweets, no juices, just water. And another trick that I took from my bariatric days is I would drink water 30 minutes before a meal, and I would wait 30 minutes after the meal to drink. I tracked everything for the first month, and then once I got in a routine on my diet, I stopped tracking because I thought it was just too tedious. Now, to stay focused, I set microgoals on my weight, something to keep me focused and keep me going. So things like, getting under 300 pounds or getting under 294 pounds, because that was the lowest I got on a keto diet. Getting under 285, getting under 280, or getting under 274, because that's the lowest I got on the gastric sleeve. And then getting to 250, because that was my playing weight in college. Just those little things, 5 pounds at a time to keep me going, eventually got me to my goal of 225 and even below it. So each goal gave me a target, and each target gave me momentum. And then the hardest chapter came: maintenance. There was no blueprint for this, so I just had to figure it out. Maintenance was harder for me than the actual active weight loss journey. After week 29, I immediately stepped down from the 10 milligram dose straight to the 5 milligram dose. And the food noise came back immediately, and it hit me hard. I probably should have stepped down going to the 7.5 milligram dose first before going to the 5 milligram. But after spending a month on 5 milligram, I jumped right back up to 7.5 milligrams to quiet the food noise. And I also began experimenting. I would go between 7.5 milligram and 10 milligrams dose. I tried a 10-day injection schedule. I tried a 14-day injection schedule. I adjusted my workout frequency along with my workout intensity. And over the next 75 weeks, I lost another 26.7 pounds to get to the weight that I am as of the recording of this video, which is 197 pounds even. At my lowest, I reached 194.4 pounds, but now I'm comfortably maintaining between 195 and 200. My body composition went from when I started about 41% body fat down to where I am now, about somewhere between 18 and 19%. And the only loose skin that I have really is on my stomach. And it sits well enough on my frame where you can't notice it unless you're really, really looking for it. So I've lost over 37% of my starting weight, which is blowing the trial data out the water. I think they're at 20%. So at 37.5%, I knocked it out the ballpark. And if I look at my highest weight back from 2015, when I was 358 pounds, and account for that, I am now down 161 pounds from my highest weight of 358, which is a loss of 45% of my weight. Now, let's talk about my health transformation. When I started Zepbound, I was diagnosed with insulin resistance, prediabetes, metabolic syndrome. I had 4 of the 5 criteria. I had low HDL. I had I had high LDL. I had high triglycerides, high total cholesterol, high blood pressure, severe sleep apnea. My pressure was at 14 and 15. And on January 3rd, when I took my labs, my A1C was 5.7. My total cholesterol was 244. My triglycerides were 324. My HDL was 39. My LDL was 154. And I had stage 2 hypertension. My blood pressure was routinely in the 150s over 190s. And today, my A1C is 5.1. My total cholesterol dropped down to 160. My triglycerides dropped down to 57. My HDL was up now to 60. My LDL is down to 86. And my blood pressure is routinely like 105 over 65. And my sleep apnea is gone. And the CPAP transfer, and losing that CPAP deserves its own call out. I started noticing the machine was overpowering me pretty early on in my journey. It was blowing air so hard that it would force my mouth open. So I had to manually adjust the pressure down from 14 to 15 down to the lowest setting at 4. And then eventually that became too much. By July, I knew that I no longer needed the machine. And by December, my provider confirmed it and told me to stop using it. So for the first time in almost 20 years, I slept without that CPAP machine. And I can tell you it was very liberating. Now let's talk about side effects. For my side effects, I experienced mild constipation, which was manageable with Marilax, Mago 7, fiber, and water intake. And I also experienced a constant runny nose. And basically, you have this nerve called the vagus nerve, and that nerve has GLP-1 receptors, and that nerve signals the brain about your appetite, slowing gastric emptying, your blood sugar control, etc. The vagus nerve also controls your heart rate and your immune system. And because the nerves here are activated, it can cause a condition known as vasomotor rhinitis, which presents as cold and allergy symptoms. So that's sneezing and congestion, and of course, runny nose. So if you're experiencing that, this could be related to your GLP-1. In addition to that runny nose, I also have periods of sneezing fits where I just sneeze for like 10 to 12 times in a row. And it's a trade-off that I would gladly take because of the turnaround in my health. Next is cold sensitivity. Less fat, lower metabolic rate, you have a colder body. This fall, I've been extremely cold despite it being unseasonably warm here in Vegas. Temps have been in the 70s, which is like 20 degrees above normal. But I also had it this past summer. Whenever the air conditioner came on in the house, I would grab a blanket and cover up until the air stopped blowing. This could be because I have less fat and/or I have had metabolic adaptation. My basal metabolic rate has decreased, so it slows down heat production. And then there's alcohol. Whiskey used to be my favorite Friday ritual. I haven't touched it much at all since I started this medication. I've probably had about 5 or 6 drinks total in this 2-year period. So my liquor collection is literally collecting dust right now. And this one was surprising. I used to cook barbecue about 2 to 3 times a month. I have a custom $4,000 smoker that weighs probably about half a ton. And I just don't have the desire to do it anymore outside of holidays. I have family in town. And I don't know if that's because I just don't have the desire to eat it, or I just don't find that much joy in doing it anymore. I enjoy doing it during the holidays when I have family around so they can enjoy the food, but it's not something that is top of mind for me anymore. And then there was a fainting episode that I had. I jumped up fast from a seated position on my couch to get something out of my car in the garage. And when I got to the door, I fainted, smashing my head on the dining room table. I ruined my glasses. That cost me about $300, $400. And I don't know if it was hypoglycemia, which is when your blood sugar is too low, or if it was orthostatic hypotension, which is when your blood pressure suddenly drops when standing. So I've been focusing on making sure that I pause and take a pace when I get up from a seated position to make sure I don't get that dizziness. And I haven't had a fainting episode since. I think that was probably a year into my journey or so. And then let's talk about the non-scale victories. And this might be my favorite part. Riding every single roller coaster at Six Flags Magic Mountain for my 50th birthday. I had a lot of fun doing that. I've reversed my sleep apnea, fixing every major marker on my lab, fitting comfortably in airplane and stadium seatings, hiking freely in places like Sedona and the Grand Canyon, being able to buy clothes off the rack in any store, even though I hate shopping, just the ability to go in and do that is amazing. I have to order it online and hope it fits right. And then regaining confidence. I mean, here I am, an introvert, doing a video on YouTube and social media, doing interviews with other people about their GLP-1 journeys. So I'm really enjoying those things about this journey, the non-scale victories. Now, if I had any regrets, it would be I would document my journey more visually. I have very few regrets, but one is I didn't document my journey with pictures and videos enough. One thing about seeing myself in pictures over time, it helped my mind catch up with my body to show how much my body had changed over this journey. Despite people telling you, despite seeing the numbers on the scale, despite your clothes fitting differently, despite looking at yourself in the mirror, it doesn't really catch until you see, at least for me, it didn't really catch up to me until I saw myself in the picture and I was able to do side-by-side comparisons and see how different I looked. The number two thing, I would get a DEXA scan from day one. I found out later in my journey that my composition scale was not measuring my body composition, my fat, my lean muscle and stuff, right? The weight was fine, but the body composition part of it was wildly inaccurate. Thankfully, I got the DEXA scan and was able to find a scale that was on point with the DEXA scan results. And I would buy clothes more strategically. I wish I would have planned better for this because I ended up spending probably $3,000 to $4,000 on clothes as I went through this journey. I donated many clothes to Goodwill that still had the tags on them because I just couldn't fit them by the time I went to go put them on because my weight was coming off so rapidly. I never got a chance to fit into those clothes. So by the time I got to them, by the time I went to go put them on, I was already past them in weight. So I wish I would have gone to like a thrift store to kind of bridge the gap and let the weight settle in a little bit before going to the store and buying clothes. So I would offer those things as advice if you're starting your journey. And another thing that I would strongly advocate for is weight training. You got to mitigate waste. You got to mitigate your muscle loss. And then you do that through strength training and through getting your protein in. Getting the protein in is not enough. You have to also do some kind of strength training. It doesn't mean you need to go to a gym. You can do it at home. You can do it using your body weight. You can do resistance bands. You can get small barbells, but you have to do something to activate those muscles. So that is my story. If you're considering starting your own GLP-1 journey, I am an affiliate for a telehealth service that works with licensed obesity specialists. There is a link in the description of this video for a free consultation. And they have brand name and compounded options available. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.